Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. Time for another edition of the RTI Lowdown. Got a lot going on. We got a lot to talk about today. Let's get to it. I'm your host, Bob Baskerville, joined as always by On Three's Chris Lowe. This guy knows some people. He's pretty looped in. I'm just thankful to be able to spend some time on screen with him. I'm blessed with his presence. Now he's my man. He's a good friend, and I love doing this show with him. CeeLo, how are you, man?
I'm great. It's good to be back home. Got home late last night from Nashville, the SEC tournament. Well, what a great city to have any event in. And with Bridgestone Arena, Bob, I know you've been there, right downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Fans love it, man. You're so centrally located. There's so much to do. I was talking to Scott Ramsey of the National Sports Council, and I really believe within 5 years they're going to get a Super Bowl. I think they will get a national championship football game. I think they'll get a Final Four. I think you'll see all of those things within 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years. I think they're coming, and it's that city is absolutely just booming.
Well, I sent you a text that first Tennessee game, which we're going to recap here in just a moment. I saw you. You had some nice seats, my man. You were right behind the announce team on SEC Network.
Yeah. Always, when I look up, I don't realize it, and I think, oh gosh, I'm right behind Jimmy Dykes and Carl Ravitch, and knew the camera would be on them. So I thought, okay, don't pick your nose or do anything stupid. But yeah. I did get a lot of texts that game saying, you're getting a lot of airtime. Yeah,
you can't go and murder a big order of nachos.
No. Spill a drink on you or anything like that.
Well, no, I agree with you, man. Nashville's a great place. I mean, I know it's gotten so much more crowded, but still a lot going on there. Bridgestone's a great venue. I hope the SEC tournament stays there for a long, long time. First, before we get started, a quick plug for YouTube. If you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe. We really appreciate that. That's what helps us continue to get even more momentum going with this show. Maybe you listen to us as a podcast, which is great as well. We're available wherever you listen to your podcast, so just make sure if you haven't done it already that you download us. Make us part of your regular rotation. We sure do appreciate it. As I said, got a good show for you today. We are in peak March Madness mode as we now have a field of 68 set, meaning the next couple of weeks will be spectacular. If you're a basketball fan like myself and like Chris are, we'll recap how the Tennessee Vols performed in Nashville in the SEC tournament, where the boys landed in the big dance. That's out now, and real talk on how far we feel this team can go now that we know what the actual roadmap looks like. We'll also get to discuss what's next for Kim Caldwell and the Lady Vols. They'll be getting their assignment here within the next few hours. They're going to go dancing, we know that much. But just how long will they be playing postseason basketball, given the way this team has been playing on the court, and then the obvious discord that's happening with that team internally. Josh Elander's baseball Vols now have one weekend of SEC play under their belt as they wrapped up a series on Sunday in Athens against 8th-ranked Georgia. We'll let you know how the boys did there. But before all of that, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for great locally based insurance professionals to help you with your home, your car, or business coverage, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group. And as always, appreciate their partnership and support with the Lowdown. Topic A for today, Tennessee basketball. The Vols have a slow start in the SEC tournament. Their opener against Auburn, but they finished strong to win that game. And then they run into Vanderbilt for the second time in less than a week, and they get sent packing, losing again to the Commodores. First, we'll talk about the opponent in Nashville that was a desperate Auburn squad, CeeLo. They were literally playing for their postseason life. They stood at 17-15 coming into the game against Tennessee, and they were projected to slide in as possibly one of the final at-large bids for the NCAA tournament if they had won their game against the Vols. So you could feel a vibe with them. Pretty much a must-win game for the Tigers. And early in the game, Auburn looked like the better team. They jumped out to a 7-point halftime lead, extended that lead to 10 in the second half. But that's when the tide turned in a big way, Chris.
Auburn, I felt going into the game, was in a decent position. I knew how much they needed to win that game, and I knew they would play well. I knew Stephen Pearl would have his team ready, and they were. It just, when Tennessee hit them with that run, that 20-0 run in the second half, it was almost like it happened, in slow motion, because Auburn was, I thought, was sort of really controlling that basketball game. And then when Tennessee got it going, and really more specifically, Nate Ament got it going, Auburn just sort of crumbled. And, I know it was one of those things where Tennessee's ability to get it to him, and he continued to get what I thought was a good whistle in that game and made his free throws, and Auburn just never could recover. Auburn was a team that did play a tough schedule, and had some big wins. They won at Florida, but you just can't lose as many games as they did and get into the tournament. I'm glad that precedent. And listen, I've known Stephen Pearl since he played, but any team, let's make it an aimless, faceless team. I'm glad the committee didn't make that precedent and put a team in that had as many losses as Auburn did. And certainly had they gotten in and Miami of Ohio didn't, I think that really would have been a shame.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris, from the standpoint of just what I was struggling with, the way Auburn looked early in that game. And if Tennessee lost that game, I don't think it was going to affect their standing too much in the seeding, something we're going to talk about here a little bit later. But at the same time, I just felt like, God, are we going to be the enablers to help Auburn get into the tournament with that many losses? I just hated that concept. So thankfully, it really didn't become a thing. Tennessee stepped up in the second half. To be specific, you talked about that run they made. It was a 22-2 run, so a 20-point swing, highlighted by a clearly healthy Nate Ament, who scored the first 10 points of that run. He was unstoppable. And at that point, it felt like the game just wasn't close at that stage. Tennessee wins 72-62. You saw Stephen Pearl get frustrated, get teed up. That I felt just added to kind of the landslide that was happening. As far as Nate Ament goes, it was far beyond my expectations, honestly. I expected we'd see him maybe 18, 20 minutes, kind of a pitch count, so to speak. But in the second half in particular, I mean, he scored a team-high 27 points. He scored 17 of them in the second half to go along with 8 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. He ended up playing 31 minutes. And then Jacoby Gillespie chipped in with 15 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals. CeeLo, I would tell you, though, those guys, obviously, we don't win the game without those guys contributing offensively. Felix Okpara had 6 points, 7 boards, but he had 2 blocked shots during that 22-2 run that I felt were as important as any baskets that were made. I felt like those were plays that totally just closed the loop on swinging the momentum in this one.
Yeah, one of them was spectacular, and was able to. And you're right; those types of plays change the trajectory of games, and I think that one did. And his ability to protect the rim has been a big factor for Tennessee all year long. And it's you saw that in that game. I'm sitting there watching that run, and you're thinking, okay, Auburn's going to make a basket, they're going to stop it, and they just never did. And the ability to have a player of Ament's caliber to go to him, who can create mismatches and make his free throws. I was talking to him after the game, and I said, can you tell the difference in the whistle that you're getting now compared to maybe a month ago or 5 weeks ago? And, taking the ball hard and being strong and being aggressive. And he said, yeah, I think as I've gotten more aggressive and as I've been able to get in and shoot the mid-range jump shot, that I have gotten a better whistle. And I know that's something that Rick Barnes has preached to him. And I know Rick feels like he's been held and bumped and beaten up a lot this year. But I think they knew going into that was going to be other teams' philosophy against him, because he's not the biggest, strongest, bulkiest guy out there. He's pretty wiry and rangy, but I think he's adjusting. He has adjusted, and certainly did in that game. Now the next game against Vanderbilt, playing back-to-back days, was a different story. But I think, hey, he goes see that in the tournament. I can promise you that, Bob. They will go out, whether it's SMU, whether it's Miami of Ohio, they're going to go after him and see if they can get him off his game physically.
Yeah, I agree. Just to close the loop on Auburn, this has been a pattern. It happened in the Auburn game. It happened in the next game against Vanderbilt, which we'll talk about in a moment. Tennessee's proclivity to allow guards, like the top guards for their opponents, to just have lights out games. I mean, it's crazy. Pettiford was on fire in the first half, had 16 points. He finished with 28. It felt like the Vols slowed him down, and that's all they needed to do, honestly, defensively, because besides Pettiford, Auburn shot 12 of 42 from the field as a team, so 28%. And I felt like they did that. In a closing note on Auburn, like you said, they finish 17-16. They finished, just a reminder, they finished 12th in the SEC regular season, and I know they had like a top 3 or 4 strength of schedule nationally. But losing 9 of your last 12 games, 4 of your last 6, that's very, very tough to ignore, particularly with a 17-16 record. And I know they're getting a lot of heat for it, frankly, putting all sorts of social media hits out there this weekend about their quad 1 games that they played, not won, but played, and just how, it was almost like a lot of participation trophy fodder, and it just, I really think they would have had to take stock about the NCAA tournament in general if Auburn had made it. So again, I know that they beat Florida, maybe the most impressive win of the season in the SEC. They also beat St. John's, who's playing great ball now. That's great. They also lost to teams like Arizona and Purdue, and I forget another one. Maybe it was at Gonzaga. They lost by 30-plus points to all of those teams. So Auburn, spoiler alert, they did not make the field of 64 or 68, and they shouldn't have. And so no bone to pick with Auburn or Stephen Pearl. I just feel like there was all's well with the world in the bracketology space, just because that we've never seen a team 1 game over 500 get an at-large bid, and that trend will continue.
Well, it really would have been bad had they gotten in over someone like Miami of Ohio. Obviously, Miami of Ohio did get in as an at-large and won every game they played, but won until they got into their conference tournament. And if that happened, then just tear it up and start all over again and have one tournament for all the big boys. And if you win, 2 or 3 games over 500, but you play a good schedule, you get in, and then have another tournament for the mid-majors.
Yeah,
nobody wants that, because the magic of the tournament is the 12 beating the 5, the 14 beating, the 3, the upsets that we see occur over and over again in the tournament in a school like a Miami of Ohio, and it may be Tennessee if they can win their first round against SMU, pulling that upset. So no, I never want to see that precedent where a team in a big conference, just because they played a good schedule but didn't have a great year, get in simply because of that.
Yeah. We're singing from the same hymnal there, man. Okay, back to Tennessee though. So they win that game. They moved to the quarterfinals, and they went out to try and exact revenge against a Vanderbilt team who handled the Vols in Knoxville again like 5 days prior. And this one, at least in the first half, it was an ugly game, but the Vols were in it. But then in the second half, Vandy goes on a 15-3 run, something we've seen happen in the second half with this Tennessee team. And you mentioned it a few minutes ago. Vanderbilt's strategy on defense, I felt, was clear, and that was swarm and rough up Nate Ament. Mission accomplished. Vanderbilt wins this game 75-68. They advanced to the semifinals. Ultimately, they advanced to the championship game after a really impressive win against Florida in the semifinals. Man, Nate never looked comfortable out there. As great as he looked against Auburn, he just looked kind of befuddled in this game. He scored 12 points, but got most of them at the line. He shot 1 of 13 from the field. He did have 11 rebounds, but still, Chris, to me, and you were there, to me, looked a little more out of sorts compared to what we saw in the Auburn game.
Yeah, there was concern in and around Tennessee's camp coming out of the Auburn game with him playing 32 minutes. Just how effective he would be, what his legs would be like. Because remember, in basketball, you never play back-to-back-to-back games except for the conference tournament.
Right.
Not in college ball. Now you do in the NBA. Now I know people say, "Wow, they're used to playing a bunch of games they did in the AAU," but that's not at the level. It's still a different ball game when you're playing in conference tournaments at the collegiate level. And they, I think they were concerned that he played probably more minutes than they had anticipated against Auburn, and he played a bunch of minutes the next night or the next day against Vandy and didn't have a lot of explosion off the floor. It didn't look like he had his legs. I mean, watching games from the court, you sometimes get a better feel. He just did not, a lot of times on his jump shot, didn't explode and get up because he shoots such a high ball. He's great at getting the ball up.
Right.
And never looked like he completely was comfortable. And the times he did take the ball to the basket, to get the ball up, he had it down. Just some of the things that, if you've ever had, anybody's ever had a high ankle sprain, and I have, essentially what that is a stretching or a partial tear of the ligaments. And it's just hard to ever feel comfortable on that until you've had some real rest. And he'd been out for what? I guess he hadn't played in about a week and a half.
Yeah.
And
close to 2 weeks.
Yeah, and not to make excuses for him, but Vanderbilt did a really nice job against him in Nashville when Tennessee won that game. He was not a big factor offensively in that game, and it was the same this time. He was 1 for 13, and that was the plan. And listen, sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other team. Vanderbilt was just a better team. Their game plan was better. Their guard play was better. They were able to overcome better than Tennessee did what was really a rock fight in the first half is what it looked like.
Yeah.
They were able to get into a little bit better groove in the second half and make some shots. And let's be honest, when Duke Miles has it going, when he's healthy, and he wasn't healthy, he missed a bunch of games during the middle of the year, but that Tanner Miles combo in the backcourt for Vandy is as good as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, we just could not solve that. Miles scored his career high, at least at Vandy, so a season high 30 points. Tanner with 19. Matter of fact, those two either scored on or assisted on it was 64 or 65 of Vanderbilt's 75 points. I mean, they just dominated the game. For us, I thought Jacoby Gillespie did his part. 21 points, 4 assists, only 2 turnovers in 38 minutes. And I think I can count comfortably on one hand, CeeLo, because I don't even think it fills up one hand. The amount of games this season, the Vols have played 33 games so far. I can count on one hand and probably have a finger or two left where Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament are both dialed in and electric on the same night. It just doesn't seem to happen. It's typically one or the other, and that's what happened in this one too. But I thought Jacoby played well.
Well, he has most of the year. I mean, think about where this team is if Tennessee doesn't pick him up or picks up a lesser player.
Yeah.
In the portal in the offseason. He's been a huge part of getting 22 wins and getting Tennessee back to the tournament. I think this is the 8th straight year that they're going to play in the NCAA tournament. No, he is I tell you, being right there on the floor, you get a better appreciation he's not a big guy by any stretch, but boy, when he gets to the rim, he finishes about as well as anybody.
Yeah.
And he's able to he hides the basketball. He's able to sort of use his body as a shield a lot of times when he gets in there and finishes. Some of the shots he makes, you're like, God, how did he make that? No, I really, as I look back on what he's done this year for Tennessee, he's been a huge, huge addition. Yeah. And I think to your point, one of the reasons, just to be candid, that it's been hard to get both of those guys going in the same game consistently is teams know that. They go into the game, know, hey, if we take one of these guys out, okay, if we can really sort of shadow this guy or that guy, Nate or Jacoby, then we're going to have a pretty good chance to win the game. And I think that's been every team's game plan is we'll go at him, go at Jacoby, we'll make him play hope he plays a lot of minutes, wear him down, make his shots more difficult, or vice versa, with Nate. And Tennessee just hasn't had anybody else on the perimeter this year who has consistently stepped up and made plays and been a scorer and been a threat to score. And you watch teams play them now, Bob. We're way late in the season. If I know that and I see that, coaches are a lot smarter than me know it. But you watch some of the other teams, the Arkansas, we mentioned, the backcourt combo at Vandy and Alabama. Tennessee's guard play, their perimeter play just hasn't matched up with some of those other teams. And I'm not saying in every capacity, because there's been games where Bishop Boswell's made a huge difference defensively, his defense or hustle, but scoring the basketball, man, that's been a struggle all year long for Tennessee on the perimeter, especially with the Nate Amen, who hasn't been 100% or hasn't played in much of the last 4 games.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you where there's some other problems with this team scoring. We'll get to that here in 1 second because, first of all, got to mention J.P. Estrella chipped in with 12 points against Vanderbilt. Jalen Carey had 10, but he was 0 of 4 at the free throw line. So this is where I'm headed. Tennessee shot 62% from the line in this game, 16 of 26. That's marking the 18th time this season that Tennessee has shot under 70% from the free throw line. Now, this is compliments of our guy Ryan Shumpert at Rocky Top Insider. When Tennessee shoots 70% or better on their free throws, their one-loss record this season, 14-1. Go figure. When they shoot under 70%, they are 8-10. By the way, Vanderbilt shot 85% from the line in this game. They shot the same amount of free throws we did. They hit 22 of them. Right there, the 7-point game, that's a 6-point advantage. And then the other one, and I want to get your thoughts on all this then, Chris. The Vols won the glass like they typically do. They dominated the offensive rebounding like they typically do. 22 of their 46, nearly half of their rebounds were on the offensive glass. But those 22 offensive rebounds resulted in only 24 second chance points. So again, that's like roughly a 50% conversion rate, which again, when you have so many bigs underneath, to me, that's not a winning formula if that's what your conversion rate is.
Yeah, if you're going to get rebounds, you got to capitalize on it. You got to score. You got to make the other, punish the other team, make them pay. If they're going to give you two shots on a trip or 3 shots on an offensive possession, you got to make them pay. And Tennessee hasn't done that enough. And Tennessee doesn't finish inside. They just don't finish well. They got guys who play hard. They got guys who are really good at positioning and getting rebounds. Certainly Parra's like that. Brown's a big guy, gets great position. Carey is a guy that, is more times than not, he's got 7, 8, 9 rebounds, but they don't finish a lot of shots inside. And none of those guys are what you call great free throw shooters. So, if I'm playing Tennessee and a Jalen Carey gets position on me, I'm just going to foul him.
Yeah.
And I think teams are starting to do that. And when you get into games like the SEC tournament where you're playing very light teams that are certainly as talented, if not more talented, and the same as Tennessee goes forward now in the NCAA tournament, you get fouled, you got to make free throws. And if you go to the line, what'd you say they went to the line 22 times? 26 times. See, that's, I had a lot of Tennessee fans complaining about the whistle in the Vandy game. I'm like, wait a minute now. Tennessee went to the line as many times as Vandy went to the line. The difference in the game was Vandy made their free throws and Tennessee didn't. And you just got to in close games. And all these games going forward are going to be close. I say most of them will. And, making shots in the paint and making free throws all year long have been a problem for Tennessee. And that's where, as you look at, all right, what's Tennessee really good at? What are they subpar at? I think that's, if you're looking at concerns for Tennessee the rest of the way, it's been able to score and finish around the rim and been able to make your free throws.
Yeah, amen to all of that. I think that's the thing. What you had talked about a few minutes back about not having somebody who is another resource to hit those outside shots on the perimeter, that's painful. But if you had a game plan that you could dominate and eat underneath, then that would neutralize a lot of that. But the problem is we're not converting enough underneath as well. So, I mean, unless we're playing South Carolina, that game we were almost perfect in the paint, but that's very, very rare. So between that and the free throws, again, man, and that's what we're going to slide into now is talk about the field of 68 because the Vols are there. But man, some of those deficiencies that we have just talked about, that's not a winning formula in March. There's just no way. I don't see a way through that unless we have some sort of ground shaking change in the way we score underneath and the way we take care of our business at the free throw line. The Vols are now 22-11. They just recently found out their assignment for the field of 68. They were assigned a 6 seed. There was a lot of talk in this past week. There were, I think a lot of people felt we were settled in as a 5 seed, but I think after the loss last week to Vanderbilt and the way some other teams have been playing, there's some other teams ascending, and it felt like a 6 seed there was a pretty good chance it was going to be a 6 seed. And that's where we end up. We are a 6 seed in the Midwest Regional, the number 1 seed in that regional, the Michigan Wolverines. But first things first, the Vols will play their first game against the winner of a play-in game in Dayton. Miami of Ohio playing SMU, 2 of the last 2 at-large bids in the tournament field. So Tennessee will be playing one of those 11 seeds on Friday. That's the good news. It's not a Thursday game. They get an extra day of rest. And they're playing in Philadelphia. Now, if Tennessee takes care of business in that game, their likely foe in the second round is the 3 seed in that region, and that's Virginia. When I look at this, Chris, you said it before we started recording. I think Miami is going to be a big national story, kind of the underdog. So there's going to be, a lot of people pulling for them. If Tennessee can get past that game, I actually like the matchup against presumably Virginia.
Yeah, and there's a few storylines here that are pretty interesting. You mentioned the Miami of Ohio storyline. I guess they were the last at-large team in, which is still I find that incredible that they could win as many games. I understand their resume doesn't match up with a Big Ten team or SEC team, but they will be the team that all of America is rooting for. See them now. They got to get past SMU and Dayton. SMU's one of their top players, B.J. Edwards, you should be familiar. Fans should be familiar with. He started his career at Tennessee, Knoxville. I think he went to Catholic high school.
Yes,
a kid that was pretty highly thought of, just for whatever reason. Didn't get a lot of minutes at Tennessee. Didn't play, but he was on the roster 1 year.
Yeah,
and now he's at SMU, and he's been a big part of that program. So he'll be ready to go against Tennessee if that's who indeed they play. The other one is if you want to look past that first round game, and Tennessee can get past it, probably playing Virginia. There's a history there in the tournament with Virginia and Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the 80s. They played them in back-to-back years when Ralph Sampson was at Virginia and Dale Ellis was at Tennessee. Just some bitter losses where Tennessee, the second one in particular in Indianapolis, Tennessee had that game won, would have been a huge upset and couldn't make free throws. I'm sure you've heard that story before this year. And then they played them in Columbus in the second round when Chris Lofton was there. It was a great basketball game. I was there, went down the final minutes. And in this game, Tennessee did make free throws. Lofton hit several clutch free throws, and Tennessee advanced to the Sweet 16. So this won't be these two teams have history in the tournament. And I like Virginia. Virginia, to me, is one of those teams, if you were picking a team outside the top 8 teams that has a chance to make a run, they're balanced. They play really good defense, and they've got several people that can beat you shooting the basketball. So it will be a tough. I think every draw. It's funny, you look at draws now, Bob, and you go back after the tournament and you look at them, and they always look completely different, either easier or harder. I think for Tennessee, it's just getting back to playing a more complete basketball game. And they haven't really done that much in the last 2 or 3 weeks. The best when they played probably was Oklahoma, where they really played well. They got scoring across the board. Even some of those games that they won, like the Mississippi State game, they let an 18 or 20-point lead slip away. South Carolina was just a team that was, all but dead. And they lost at Missouri. They lost at home to Alabama. They lost at home to Vandy. They just got to play now that they got some time to regroup. And to me, so much of it is how healthy is Nate Ament? How much better can he get in this next week?
Yeah.
How much rest can he get? How much more equipped is he to play, 30 plus minutes? Because playing 30 plus minutes against Auburn really affected him the next day against Vanderbilt. So I think that's question number one, is getting him ready. And then consistency, getting some scoring output from some of the guys in the paint. I don't know if it's Amari. I don't know if Bishop. Somebody else on the perimeter has to make some baskets. They cannot count on Jacoby being the only guy out there who's going to consistently make shots.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, what you talked about with Virginia is interesting, because I think, and first things first, we got to get past SMU or Miami, but Virginia's well coached. Ryan Odom's a great coach. They've got some good size. They've got a lot of players I haven't heard of, but watching them play Duke last night in the ACC championship, and played them well. They're good. They're not the Tony Bennett version of Virginia. They're not going to drag you into the mud, but they're not high octane either. But they're a good basketball team, and I think Tennessee, if they're hitting on all cylinders, I think Tennessee can beat them. But that'll be what tells the tale. And again, first things first, you got to get past Miami of Ohio and SMU. You mentioned with SMU, BJ Edwards, he's been hurt. Now, I know they're saying they're trying hard to get him back in time for tournament games. Boy, that's going to be interesting if he's playing against his old school. That could be very interesting. They've also got a guy named Boopy Miller, who is he is a blowtorch, averages like 20 points a game, but can score in the 30s easily. So they've got some guys. Miami, we kind of know their story. Just a bunch of guys who very high tempo offense. They score a lot of points. They're not that physical. They shoot a lot of threes. And we've seen teams like that sometimes in the past give the Vols trouble, particularly if Rick Barnes hasn't had a chance to get a look at him too much other than game film. I mean, you think about with Nate Oates with Alabama. He kind of had the upper hand on Rick in their first couple meetings, and then Rick, got the hang of it. And now Tennessee has had most of the wins, but Miami's one that I feel like if Tennessee can play their game and not get sucked into Miami's game, if this becomes a 3-point shooting contest, Miami could pull the upset. But if Tennessee doesn't bite for that, I don't see why Tennessee couldn't win that in advance to the second round.
Yeah, well, Tennessee's got to use its height advantage. Miami's not big,
right?
And they've got to go inside and make that style of game. They're just going to, much like they did against South Carolina, pound it inside and not let Miami get out, spread you out, and shoot threes.
Right.
Again, if it is indeed Miami, I think it's almost a little bit of a disadvantage to play. I mean, I guess there's two ways to look at it. Number one, you're playing a team that just played 2 nights earlier. Okay.
Right.
But number two is you got to get ready to play 2 different teams. You don't know who you're going to play if you're Tennessee. So you got to scout 2 different teams. You got to be ready to play 2 different styles, different personnel. That may make it a little bit more difficult. Now, again, the rest factor is, but I think in the second game, I would almost like to play and get it out of my system and have that sort of game under my belt. Now, if you're talking about 3 or 4 games in, like say Ole Miss had to do in the SEC tournament, absolutely. That's when fatigue really sets in. I don't think having a day rest and playing after the first game. Now, if you win, let's say that team that plays on Tuesday, or in this case against Wednesday, and you play that game, you win on Friday, and then you have to play again on Sunday, then I think it sets in more, Bob, than that second game. But no, I think so much of it is Tennessee playing one of its better games and playing like it. There was a stretch there where they were playing really good basketball. You get Nate Ament hurt, that changes things, changes your dynamic, changes the way teams play you, quite frankly. So his health, Tennessee's ability to get the ball inside and score and finish some points around the rim and not let guards, and your stat was right on, not let guards continue to put up big games, in some cases career nights. 20, 25, and 30 points. That's sort of what's been eating at them. This is the lowest, I guess, Tennessee's been seeded since Rick's been there, 6. They've never been lower than a 5. And I think sometimes when you're seeded 2 or 3, there's maybe a little bit more pressure. So we'll see how Tennessee responds to this. I do know this, though, that Rick Barnes has been around the NCAA tournament forever. I know there's a lot of gnashing of the teeth about not making a Final Four. But outside that Oregon State game, when they lost the first round, I guess that was the year after COVID, when all the games were played up in Indianapolis. I felt like Tennessee has always come to play in the NCAA tournament. His teams have always been ready to play. They played better. They've got some tough breaks, some tough draws. But I have no doubt that Tennessee will be ready and understands that, no matter what's happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks, this is where it counts. And I think his teams have, as I go back through, have always had some of their best stuff and been ready to go. And I think this one will too.
I felt that was rock bottom, that Oregon State game, where they basically, that says a lot about Rick Barnes, though, too, by the way. That was in the NCAA tournament. Rock bottom for a lot of programs is, not making the tournament or whatever the case may be. But it feels like after that Oregon State game, it changed a lot with the way the team plays. And, the proof is there. I mean, Sweet 16s, Elite 8s, all that stuff. And I agree with you. They'll be there and they'll be ready to play. I don't doubt that at all. I'm just looking at Miami's numbers again. They're second in the nation in points per game. They average 91 points a game. They shoot 40% from 3-point range. 40. I mean, there's a rule of thumb, anything over 38% from 3-point range. And if you're shooting at volume, that's what Alabama's math is always based. Feels like Miami's got a little of that, but they're not going to be as athletic as Alabama. So again, I think it's there for the taking for Tennessee. They got to be ready to play. That's all.
Yeah. I think we'll know more, about Nate's, his health. They play they played Thursday, and it was their last game. So he'll have over a week to get ready to go. And I think that helps, or at least a week to get ready to go. And they'll be smart. And, their medical staff and Chad Newman, the trainer's been there forever. Chad understands, this time of year what it takes. I think the main thing is just rest. I mean, but Rick said, I was asking Rick about it in Nashville, and there was some conversation about whether he should play at all in Nashville. And Rick made the point. He says, if you go 5 games in a row, or there's 5 games and you don't play, or I guess in this case, over 2 weeks and don't play, and then you try to plug them right back into the NCAA tournament game, especially for a freshman, that's difficult. You sort of get out of that, what I would call that basketball rhythm. There's a basketball rhythm to playing games that's important. And if you go all of a sudden go 5 straight games, 2.5 weeks, and don't play in any game situation, the rest helps. But I also think you're probably a little bit out of sorts. I think as they tried to sort of manage that, Bob, in Nashville, I think that was a big one of the determining factors. And Nate wanted to play. He was pushing to play all along, but they just, when you the most important games you're going to play are not exactly right then, but coming up, you got to make calculated decisions. And I think ultimately they felt like he was ready to go. He played 32 minutes. It didn't help him the next game because clearly he was not himself. Now he's got a whole week to get ready, and I think you will see a much better version, a much healthier version of him in that first game in Philly on Friday.
Yeah, agreed. I got to bounce this off of you. Also in that region, by the way, in our side of the bracket, Kentucky's the 7th seed. They play Santa Clara in the first round. Santa Clara is very dangerous, by the way. I was happy to see them in as a 10 seed instead of an 11. I think Santa Clara can beat Kentucky, is my point. And then Iowa State playing Tennessee State, who's a 15 seed. My point is, I can't imagine if Kentucky can beat Santa Clara. I can't imagine them beating Iowa State. But God, don't want to buy tomorrow's trouble. We got work to do in the first 2 games, but could we be facing Kentucky again in the Sweet 16? That would be it's great drama if it happens, but God, I don't want to get to that. Let's get to the Sweet 16 and see what happens. But I was kind of made me smile when I saw, God, there's Kentucky again.
But that's the beauty of the tournament, is sort of looking ahead and seeing what potential matchups may occur. And I thought last year when Tennessee played them in the Sweet 16, I said before the game, it's one of the more important games Tennessee has played, certainly in the postseason, maybe ever. And then people say, wait a minute, they played, in the Elite Eight the year before, Bruce, and they did. But I think the fact that it was Kentucky, that it was for a chance to go back to the Elite Eight, for a second straight year, was, in the realm of Tennessee basketball. And let's just remember, a program that's never been in the Final Four. I thought it was one of the more important games, which made it so important for Tennessee to win. I tell you what, though, Bob, I say this, and it drives me crazy every single year, and they always deny it. I am 1,000% convinced, and you know who else is? John Calipari, that the league tournaments don't mean squat. They don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Arkansas wins the SEC championship, and they're a 4 seed out in Portland.
Yeah.
Okay. Vanderbilt gets to the championship game. They beat a number 1 seed Florida. They didn't just beat them. They beat them. That game was a 25-point game at one point.
Yeah.
They beat them badly. They're a 5 seed. And oh, by the way, they beat Tennessee twice in a week, a team that's a 6 seed. So you can't tell me, and this is my last rant of our show, you can't tell me that bracket is not 98% drawn up by the time they play these conference championship games in the SEC's case, on Sunday. I don't think you get any. And in fact, Cal's right. So Arkansas played 3 straight games in 3 days. Same with Vandy. 3 straight games in 3 days. And I don't think it helped their seeds one bit.
No, I think you're right. As a matter of fact, I'll take it a step further. The number 1 seed in Tennessee's region, Michigan, they got handled by Purdue today in the Big Ten championship game. And then Florida, like you said, got totally handled by Vanderbilt yesterday in the SEC semifinals. I think for both those teams who are still 1 seeds, I actually think those are, if there's such a thing as a good loss to kind of, those teams have been winning at a high clip. Florida hasn't lost a game like in a couple months. I actually think it's that serves a purpose that's different. It doesn't help you so much in any sort of seeding consideration. As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter. But the point is, for Florida, it's kind of nice. You get punched in the mouth with few consequences before the games really do matter. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking for both Florida and Michigan. I'm not a bit concerned about what happened to them this weekend. They're going to be there. They could very well be in the Final Four. It could be an all chalk Final Four, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's hard to draw a lot of conclusions.
Yeah.
Period. I always look at Tennessee as an example. Tennessee got to the conference championship game last year and hung around, but lost to Florida and was able to get to the Final 8.
Yep.
2 years prior, I think I'm right here, they looked awful in their first game against Mississippi State and got beaten badly and still got to the Final 8. So, a lot of times the conference tournament is fool's goal both ways.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's just take because we're going to be watching all of this closely. By the time we do this show again, we'll be talking about whether Tennessee's still alive or not in the NCAA tournament. Here's hoping that they are. But staying with basketball, we'd be remiss if we didn't take a minute or two to talk about the Lady Vols. They get ready to get back on the court, but for how long? It's been a while. Kim Caldwell's team has sat through a long and frankly uncomfortable stretch waiting to hear their postseason assignment. That comes out tonight, Sunday night, here shortly. During that break in the action, though, everyone, fan base, media, you name it, they've all been trying to diagnose what has gone wrong with this team. They'll likely be assigned an 8 seed. They're projected to play in either the West or the East Regional. And what that means is if they win their first round game as an 8 seed, they're going to be playing the 1 seed. So if it's in the East, it's UConn. If it's in the West, it's UCLA. bottom line is, this should not be a long tournament run for the Lady Vols. But the question remains, will they be one and done in the tournament, or will they even get past that first game? We just don't know. There's a lot of disarray on this team right now, and there's been little communication outward as to what the plan is with, like, a Talasia Cooper, for example, who didn't play most of the second half. There's been reports of her having some tense conversations with Kim Caldwell. Just not sure what's going to happen there. And so really, to me, Chris, what's more important at this point is, what does the road ahead look like for this program when the season ends? I mean, there's all sorts of chatter of, could Kim Caldwell potentially lose her job? I don't know. I mean, it's a mess, man. And it does feel at the moment, whether it's whose fault it is, I don't know. But it feels like maybe she's lost the team. And, so I don't expect a deep tournament run, but if I'm a Lady Vols fan, I'm wondering what's next, man. You've got a lot of young talent, but in this day and age with players getting poached, et cetera, it just feels like everything's pretty fragile right now with that program.
I don't know what to expect either, Bob. It seems like forever since they last lost that game to Alabama,
right,
in the SEC tournament. You had all the the drama. Cooper doesn't play the last part of the game. It's sent to the bus after there was some issue in the locker room after the game. And the team just looks like it's so disjointed, so disconnected. There's a huge disconnect between a lot of the players and Kim Caldwell, clearly, to play as poorly as they did down the stretch. No, they played a really hard schedule. Okay.
Sure.
And she's pointed that out, and she's fair. They did. They played that final stretch was really hard. But I think the concern runs much deeper than that, is where is this team as far as the way they relate and connect with her? Because there doesn't look like there's really any connection. I'm not at every practice. I'm not in that locker room, but just from talking to people who are certainly closer to that program than me, that's the concern. And I think there will be a mass exodus. I think you're going to see a lot of players in the portal. They're going to have to go out and get new players. I don't know. Are they going to have to get 4 or 5? They're going to have to get 8 or 10. I don't know. But there's no doubt in my mind that there will be a lot of new faces on that team. And in some cases, that may not be bad, because I don't know that the players, a lot of them really like her. I'm not sure they like each other. They're just, the chemistry stinks on this basketball team, from coach to player, teammates. It's hard to watch them play.
Yeah.
Because you can tell that. It's just very obvious. And can Kim fix that? I think that I talked to 2 or 3 really close friends of mine who played in that program, and that, they're not dogging Kim or saying that it's time for her to go. They just wonder, is she equipped, being such a newcomer as a head coach, certainly to this level of basketball? Is she equipped to fix it? Can she fix it?
Right.
Is it fair to assess that after just 2 years? I don't know. And these are questions Danny White, he hired her. Clearly he thought she was ready. Now, she hasn't looked ready this year. She's looked like she was in over her head. But is that reason after one bad year? Because, last year, the first year, it didn't end poorly. But this year, obviously, it's been a cluster, and it's just continued to sour and look worse and worse. And you mentioned, is she going to lose her job? I don't know. I think for Danny White to fire, he's got to stand up there and say, I made a mistake. Okay. She wasn't ready. I should have seen that. That's on me. This is a proud program. We know what our standards are. We're going to move forward. Will he stand up and do that? I don't know. Does he think that that's the best way for the program to move forward by firing her? I don't know. But a lot of people will be watching to see what we get out of the Lady Vols in this first round game. What 2 weeks, I guess, will be over 2 weeks, or right at 2 weeks since they've last played.
Yeah.
And looked totally uninspired against Alabama in the SEC tournament. So a lot of eyes going to be on them and Coach Caldwell and what this team does. But to be completely honest, I haven't seen anything out of this team in the last 2 or 3 weeks that would make me think they can make a run.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I agree. And I feel like when I'm watching them play, sometimes watching her, it feels like I feel like she's not enjoying this team at all. I mean, and so then that speaks to what you said earlier about the chemistry. And we've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen, we've seen it. The portal can giveth, and sometimes, rarely, but it does happen. It taketh away. It happened to Eric Musselman with Arkansas basketball. It happened to Mike Norvell with Florida State football. Kind of happening this year with Kentucky basketball, although they're still winning more than they're losing. But I just think sometimes it's not a guarantee that if you go and bring in a bunch of talent from the portal that it's going to all mesh. And it feels like it sure isn't meshing. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see what even happens as far as can they even win one game in the tournament right now? That's not a given in my mind. So
they lost, 7 in a row? Well, they lost 7 in a row?
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I don't know. And I think even if they don't win, or even if they do win and lose to the number 1 seed, I think the questions run much deeper than just that one game.
Yeah.
They've got the Edwards kid coming in, one of the top players in the country.
Sure.
Does she start looking around? I think there's a lot of other things that you look at to truly assess what the future looks like with this program. And I have no doubt that that's what Danny White has already done. He's continuing to do, regardless of what they look like or don't look like in this first round game in the tournament.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we're going to put basketball to bed for a minute, and we're going to talk a little baseball. But before we do that, I want to make sure I give a shout out to our sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. They're your local insurance team. They are proud to call East Tennessee home. And just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all and show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about, because this is where they live too. The Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. If you want to learn more, you can certainly give them a call. Scott, Addie, all the people there, happy to help. Their phone number, area code 865-862-8233. Or you can find more information about them online at the Tate Insurance Group at tateinsurancegroup.com. That's tateinsurancegroup.com. That phone number, 865-862-8233. Good people, great service. Check them out, the Tate Insurance Group. All right, let's talk a little baseball, CeeLo, as we wind down the show today. This was an interesting week. The Vols, we knew they were entering SEC play with a weekend series at Georgia. They started with a midweek run rule blitz against Tennessee Tech. They beat Tennessee Tech 20-2 in 7 innings. And lo and behold, it felt like the bats were back. The guys follow that up then with the SEC opener, which again, weekend series down in Athens against the 8th ranked team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Tennessee takes the first game, really promising, on Friday night, but then they lose 2 very close games to lose the weekend series to the Bulldogs. Tennessee wins the first game on Friday 7-4, lose on Saturday 4-2, and then lost on Sunday in heartbreaking fashion to the Bulldogs. After jumping out to a 5-0 lead, they lose 8-7 to Georgia to go 1-2 for the weekend in Athens.
Yeah, we'll start with the good. I think Tennessee's starting pitching rotation.
Yeah.
And I felt this for most of the year. Now, they haven't been perfect, but they certainly are going to be good enough to be in a position to win every series. When you look at all 3 starters, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday starter, they pitched, I thought, very well. Blanco was outstanding for much of the game today against Georgia. But they stay healthy. They'll have the starting rotation to have a chance to win every series they play. Now, they're not going to win every series, but there's been times, honestly, even when Vitella was there, where that third starter was always, how good are they? They're younger. I don't think they really have that issue this year. And I think some of their relievers have been really, really, really big for them. Now, today in game 3, for all teams, it can get dicey. And that was where, when you get up 5-0, that's where you got to depend, especially when you get a strong outing the way they did with Blanco. You got to depend on the guys out of the bullpen to come in and hold it there. And Tennessee wasn't able to do that today. But I also think this, and this is because I always hate to say, the bullpen let them down. Tennessee had chances. If you watch that game today, they're up 5-0. They left a lot of guys on base. They could have been up easily, Bob, 7 or 8-0. And you wonder, if you get into the 6th inning of that game or 7th, and you're up 8-0 as opposed to 5, there's a much different dynamic. And Georgia starts to chip away. They chip away. They make it a 2-run game, and then they hit the big bomb to get up by 8-6. And then Tennessee's got the fortitude to come back and hit the home run to get within 1. And poor old Stone Lawless thinks he's got one to put him ahead by 1, and Georgia makes just an incredible catch, rob him of a home run, and here we are. I think this is a team, though, and I think the league is like this because you've seen teams already around the league who've lost to some other teams outside that you're like scratching your head saying, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
I think Tennessee's still got a chance to be right there in the thick. Are they going to win the league? I don't know that they're that good, but I do think they're certainly a team that if they can continue to get some consistency out of the bats, they've got the starting pitching rotation, I think, to be right in the thick of things in the SEC.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point that I forgot about I think it was the 3rd inning. I believe it might have been top of the 3rd, maybe top of the 4th, but Tennessee had the bases loaded with Henry Ford at the plate, and Henry Ford has been a monster so far this season with the bat, of course. And they hit a fielder's choice out to finish the inning. But you're right, that could have been 8 or even 9 runs, which would have changed things dramatically. Braden Krenzel's been great, but today he gets tagged for 5 runs. I myself feel like Elander kept him in too long, but it's easy for me to second guess. But that was a tough pill to swallow. And yeah, that catch in the 9th, man, that guy's glove was over the fence. I mean, that was
a great play.
Catch. It was. Now a little bit of it's not even trivia; it's just a fact. If you count this weekend, that's Tennessee's 6th consecutive SEC series loss. If you go back to last season, so. That's a tough one. Now, they have a chance to get all of this corrected, and they better, because a very necessary but manageable week is ahead. They have a midweeker on Tuesday with Eastern Kentucky and then a home weekend series with Missouri. And the reason I say it's important they win that, they hopefully sweep it, because then you go the following weekend to Vanderbilt, and then the following weekend you got LSU coming here. So,
and both of those teams, LSU and Vandy, have scuffled a little bit too. Yep. And I don't know, you look around the league. I mean, Mississippi State's good. There's a bunch of teams I think you could point to and say, boy, they're talented. They got stud pitchers, but the baseball in the SEC is so deep, it's so balanced, and teams get hot. I mean, I always go back to Ole Miss and Mississippi State. The years they won national titles, they just barely got into the tournament and won. Even last year, Tennessee didn't start great last year, and found a way to fight and scrap and get into the super regional. I'm not in the business of making hard and fast decisions or assessments of teams after one SEC series. My assessment of Tennessee is they were right there in all 3 games. They won one. They should have won today. You can't give up 5-run leads, but they're right there on somebody else's home field in the rain against a top 10 team with every chance to win that series. And I think that's, to me, I take more good than bad out of that as Tennessee moves forward.
I would agree. And I agree with what you said earlier, too. I think the starting pitching looks like it can carry the weight of a really tough SEC. I really believe it, between Coons and Blanco and Landon Mack. I mean, those guys, they're all top tier. So I feel good about that. One last thing I'll add, and maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid from this series and everything else, but is Manny Marin starting to develop a little bit of a clutch gene? That guy's getting big hits for this team.
Yeah, he's played very well, and I agree. And you see now where they're batting him in the order.
Yeah,
getting him more at bats because he has been able to come up with and deliver in crucial situations and hitting the ball hard, hitting a lot of line drives. Yeah. And I think that's something, again, when a guy's making that type of contact and seeing the baseball the way he is, you want to move him up in the front part of that order, and that's what Josh Elander has done. So, and I think getting some of the other guys back, that had been hurt, like getting Wright back. And they had a couple of guys they hadn't gotten. So having some options, to in late game situations, even though, Lawrence's home run ball was caught. I mean, to be able to bring a guy like that off the bench late in the game in a key situation, he just missed putting Tennessee ahead by about 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah.
And, so I think you're going to see Josh have some more options and go with guys who are swinging a hot bat and not just be stuck, with 7 or 8 guys and not have anybody else that he can go to if he thinks they're going to be able to produce for him.
Yeah, I agree. All right, my man. Well, that does it for this week. Another episode in the books. We appreciate everybody out there spending time with us, for giving us a watch or listen. As always, make sure, like I've said before, hit that like and subscribe button for the show on YouTube. Download our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. We sure do appreciate that support. And as always, many thanks to our great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. We'll be back next week to recap the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I'm betting there will be, whether it's Tennessee related or not, there will be some wild stories to talk about with March Madness. It always happens. But we'll talk about how the Vols did and the Lady Vols did. Hopefully we'll be talking about extending their seasons. And then, of course, another recap of all baseball and their week in action. And as always, we will keep it covered, all of it, covered for you during the week right here. Keep it locked in on Rocky Top Insider at rockytopinsider.com and all socials for the best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. Chris, as always, man, appreciate you being a part of the show. Love doing this with you. Thank you again. I hope you have a great week ahead.
Same to you, Bob. I look forward to seeing you in Philly. We'll run the Rocky Steps together.
Hey, if only I was going to be there, but that would be.
Have you ever done that? You ever been to Philly and run the Rocky Steps?
No, I've only been to Philly for some meetings in my past corporate life. So I've never spent much time there, but my
gives
wife,
you a reason to go. This gives you a reason to go.
Oh, I know. That's not a bad idea. My wife went to school. She went to art school there for a year. She loved Philadelphia. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get a wild hair and you never know, man. I might see you there. All right. Again, thanks to all of you for watching and listening. We look forward to joining you again right here next time on the RTI Lowdown.